that, we call the meeting to order at 5:31. I believe everyone knows Leslie, right? Yeah, okay, great. No introductions needed. So we'll just quickly, we'll have Leslie go first here, but before we go there, let's just go through these quick pieces. So approval of the minutes, that was included. A draft, very thorough notes. Thank you, Sierra, for doing that. So I'll make a motion, we accept the minutes as emailed. Second with that one. All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Oppose, abstention, so moved, great. Public comments, not seeing anybody on Zoom or in the room, we'll move past that. And then Leslie, we'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So Sierra asked me to give you all an overview of what the Planning and Zoning Commission is working on right now, in particular, proposed changes to the zoning regulations. And two of them are, there's three different things. Two of them are really easy and basic. One is, and those two are to bring our regulations into compliance with state statute. New statutes were passed. And so one of them is that no group child care facility in a residential zone can be treated any differently than a single family home. That language is becoming more and more common. Different things not being able to be treated differently than single family homes. And it is, so it's updating our regulations to comply with state statute. An example of what that could be is, for instance, now we have requirements for things like specific play equipment. You can't require a single family house to have specific play equipment. You can't require, there are other, you can't require a child care facility to have them. It doesn't mean they don't have to have play equipment. What it means is it's a way of funneling back to the state the single authority for licensing child care facilities, so that people don't go, they get their license from the state and then they find out, oh my God, you're kidding me, I've got to go back to, I have to go to the municipality as well, and I have to make sure that my, lawn is cut to at least, an inch and not more than 2 inches, or I have a 10-foot buffer when my neighbors don't have to have a 10-foot buffer. Things like that. So it's very basic. These kinds of things happen every 2 years. So that's one of them. That's the one that deals with childcare. The other is that the state just passed a statute that requires any new parking facility with more than 30 spaces is required to have electric vehicle charging stations. I think it's 10% or 10%. So that's the other one. So it doesn't work retroactively, although I think places are going to be installing them. We're on the verge of getting 2 more to install in the front of the building.
So does that is just for a parking structure, or say that there's a business that, okay, so there's a business that just has more than 30 parking spaces?
The charging stations, are they like credit card swipe, or does the owner have to pay for that?
That is not covered in the statute. So there are lots of places where they're free now, and some places that charge. I'll be perfectly honest with you, not owning an electric vehicle yet. We'll all be owning them at some point, but I don't know the answer to that, but I know that a lot of places are free. Sarah, do you know more on that?
Well, when electricity costs money, so the property or building owner so we would have to pay for it if it's free,
It's, yeah, I'm looking into that.
It would be, nuts to me if they're forcing it to.
that would be my thought.
Yeah.
I mean, so then there's probably a company that provides the service. That two businesses, hey, we'll put our charging station here and we'll collect the money, we'll have a credit card swipe. And nobody will use it because it's not free, but right.
Well, until they stop making gasoline. The first step to making cars that don't require gasoline is. California having said they will not. Cars that are not electric, or that they will only have cars that do not use gasoline.
2030 or 35.
Yeah, soon enough.
Yeah.
And as California goes on major production like that, so goes the nation. So those are those two really basic, really simple. It's just making our regulations consistent with the state statute. See, but the real thing that I wanted to talk to you about also is if you can, this is a zoning map of most of Groton down here. And you can see up here where the black line outlines these, that's the GC zone, the general commercial zone. And it is, and that area is, that's mostly Bridge Street, it's the top of Thames Street, that's the right. It's the top of Thames Street, Bridge Street, and then a piece of North. And before I was here, when the regulations were set for that area, in an effort, I understand the intention, but it didn't really work out, which is why these documents are flexible. The GC zone currently only allows 2 dwelling units per parcel. So you can only have 2 apartments per parcel, which does not encourage mixed use, does not encourage increasing the economic market for small businesses. And it hasn't really worked. It hasn't happened. There's only one that, a couple more. Yeah, Main Street a little bit, yeah, but very few parcels have residential units on them. So, and we've had developers coming in over the course of the last year or so saying, we want to build, multifamily residential, and we're happy to do some mixed use with it. But we're looking to, we know collective vote is growing, there's more people who may want to live closer to work, and also there's a housing crunch in general. So, so we've had several developers coming in saying that they're interested in building multifamily. Multifamily in Groton is defined as 3 or more units per parcel. We're talking about developers who are interested in numbers much larger than that. So there was consensus among the commission and my professional opinion that it is a good idea to allow, not without constraints, but to allow multifamily to be built in this area. It impacts very few residential properties. The residential properties that do exist are either on the other side of the bridge, so some shadows, are on the other side of the bridge, and also further up on the hill. Right. So for the most part, we've been looking over. We've had some discussions about how many stories we would limit it to. And right now, the proposal that is being put forward by the commission is to allow 4 stories by site plan. Okay, it still comes to the commission, but it would be, there wouldn't be a public hearing. Look, we want to build this up. We know what we want it to look like, we'll include that in the regulations. Not, when I say what it looks like, I don't mean style or color. I'll get into what I can. But, and then if you want to go to 6 stories, it would be special by special permit, and that would be a public hearing. These are always really interesting amendments for me to field with a commission, because an example is where you put the building on the site will make a difference as to what other people can see or not see. And it may be counterintuitive, but the closer you put buildings to the street, if somebody's on a hill, the less they're going to actually be impacted visually by whatever's being built. Unless it's, of course, being built so high that it's going to become, you know, at eye level. The difference in height is the topography. It runs about, I think it's around, I know it's not exactly 20, but it's about 20 feet above sea level along the cliff edge of Thames Street. And if you go to the top of Groton Bank, it's at, I think, 86. So that's a pretty big, that gives you a lot of room, plus the effective perspective when you're looking at to make it less imposing than if it was somebody building something across the street. That's sometimes a difficult concept to get across to people, but it's the way it works. So included in this is also, that's the gist of it, is to allow more and denser housing and to pull it up to the street, because some of you were here when I talked about the real, in my opinion, the real difference that a building can make to a place. The closer you have a building to the street, the more you're going to define the street, and that's the area that the public sees. That's the area that the public uses. The further away you have it, if you have the proverbial sea of parking, the more sprawled out it feels, the more you feel like, and you probably do in fact have to be safe, drive from one place to another. Some of you have heard the example I often use, where I live in Hamden, and there's a big strip mall. It's one of the first strip malls in Connecticut, and was considered to be this amazing thing in the 1950s. It was in the New York Times, and you know, isn't this wonderful? Except that it's a U-shaped strip mall, and you can go to Panera's on one side. But if you want to go across the way to Ashley's for ice cream, unless you want to walk that and it's fairly large, you tend to get in your car and drive across the parking lot. And there's a level of insanity to that. It's not insane in that you're probably safer doing that, but it's one shopping plaza. You should be able to walk from place to place without taking your life in your hands. So that is, sorry,
or taking multiple car trips.
yeah. So usually if I'm doing a big slide presentation, that's one of the slides that's in there. And it's, you know, you see that it's crazy. So we're trying not to do that. We want people to be able to cross the streets if people are living on both sides of the street, we want them to be able to consider the people across the street from them as neighbors and part of their community. As opposed to, that's one housing complex, this is another housing complex, that's another housing complex, and everybody's just, you know, arm's length apart. So just in terms of measurements, just to be clear that 4 stories would not exceed 50 feet. There's it's to get away from people trying to wheedle their way into getting an extra story or two. It is the voice of experience and gray hair that brings me to that conclusion. So looking to putting parking in the back of these buildings, putting these buildings closer to the street, so that you're enlivening the street. You're also keeping the street safer. If people can see the street and they're walking. There was a famous urban planner named Jane Jacobs who wrote a book called The Death and Life of Great American Cities. It's a pretty easy read, and it was published, I think, in 1960, and it is still a phenomenal read. And what she talks about, she coined the idea of eyes on the street. So if you're sitting by your living room window, we all just stare out the window once in a while, we all suffer to think about it. Even if you're not actually looking at a specific spot, the perception on the street that there are people that could be looking out at you actually makes streets safer. Because people feel like they might be being seen. There are lots, what really wasn't until a lot of these psychological aspects were really investigated more than by architects, and instead by philosophers, and planners and sociologists. They really fed architects and planners. It was sort of a sine curve. And a lot, as those ideas have gotten incorporated into design and planning, places have really become better and safer. When they're not, I can say this as an architecture, having gone to architecture school, there are a lot of idiots out there who say, I'm going to design my building or my community, and I'm going to violate every principle to see what happens. And thank God it was just in school and it was experimental. You know, bad things didn't happen. There's a lot of bad design out there. I'm the first one to say, yes, there is. So that is, so the dimensions of things have been adjusted to meet allowing that 4 to 6 story build out on just in the northern GC zone. I want to be really clear about this. It is only the northern part where Cumbies is, and down on Main Street is going to stay GC. The northern part is going to change to be GCR, general commercial and residential. So just to be clear, nobody's putting a 6-story building where Cumbies is. Listen, there is an argument to be made, but we're not making that argument this time around. The other thing that's being changed in here, again, similar to the two you're welcome. To make our regulations consistent with state statute is adjusting the parking. Our parking requirements have been ridiculously high. And the state passed a statute in 2021 saying that for any one bedroom or studio, no municipality can require more than one parking space. And that's single family home, apartment building, whatever, for any 2 or more bedrooms. We can't require more than 2 spaces. Now, there are ways to finesse some of this, but there's also a reason for not. Even at times in the city of Groton with electric vote and Pfizer, you can still find a parking place in part of the city. It's definitely parts of the city that are parked cheek to gel and you can't. I get it. Took me a while to be convinced of that because y'all are anomalies. There is no question. Most places are way over parked, but if we want to go somewhere, we can find a parking place generally. Even Paul's, you go to Paul's, you don't get the parking space right out in front. You get a parking space around the corner, you get out, you walk 3 or 4 steps. So some of it is that, but anyway, this is state statute, so it's changing the regulations too.
It's changing the regulation just for residential, you mentioned bedrooms, or is there also differences for commercial?
We're not changing any of the commercial, we are only bringing it into compliance with the state.
Okay.
So, but there are other things to look at if, and if you find that something's not working for you, I know on Main Street, parking is just.
Well, that's twice as bad a couple weeks ago, but we've had that discussion.
It's just, it is what it is. The street was built before cars. So bunch of little things with like capitalizing little things. And I'll read you what's changing in terms of the parking, in terms of how it should sit on a property. One is that parking lots shall not have prominent frontage along public street, except for entrances and driveways to such parking lots. So either parking in the back or there are other ways of sort of not necessarily blocking off the parking, but there's something called street screens, and the way that they work is, you think about the funeral home down on Thames Street, and there's that wall, but there's also that big arch, and you can see through the big arch easily, and you can go and park back there. That's a really good example of a street screen where you're keeping the physical nature of the wall of the street where the buildings are, the wall that the buildings make line up, not by the inch, but roughly. People feel safer walking by buildings where they have that edge. Again, one of these sociological things that just is, it's true, it's been proven, it is what it is. People don't like walking by, you're more inclined to walk by the funeral home than you are to take a walk amongst the parking lots at EB. Because people don't feel as safe walking amongst parking lots. There we go. So that's, there's a fence, there's some shrubs, and there's opening, and you also feel like you can be seen. Something happened.
That's a funeral home? I never knew that.
I didn't know that's.
I thought it was apartments right there. I think about the one just past.
Just past it, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's actually, I think, one of the most interesting architectural buildings in the city because of how it sits on the street and what it does for encouraging pedestrians. Yeah. So that's the idea.
Drive by it 15 times a day. You never know.
The next is surface parking shall be masked from the frontage by a building or street screen. That's, I was just talking about. And next is all parking required for multifamily or mixed use shall be located either below grade or at least 20 feet beyond the front yard setback. So if you have a building, if this is your parcel, this is the street, your building comes back here, your parking has to start 20 feet back from that. Again, it's not that you can't, it's not an opposition to being able to see it from the street. It's that it's the building that gets the primacy. It's the building that contributes to that architectural dialogue on the street that makes people feel safe, that makes people feel like they want to walk, that makes people be able to read signs. That big strip mall that I was telling you about in London, somebody came in when I was the planner there and wanted a variance to be able to get a bigger sign because their business was on the far end of that U from the street and people couldn't see it from the street. It's like, yeah. Let's figure out how to do that in a way that makes sense.
I understand your issue, but.
So. Anyway, let me see if there's anything else. I mean, those are the basics. That's, you know, there's some capitalizations and a few. Smaller things changing. Which to that and that to which make my skin crawl. Are not changed, so.
Any questions for Leslie? Well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time.
Sure, my
Appreciate that.
pleasure.
Yeah.
If you have questions, feel free to ask me or Sierra. Please do not hesitate. And also, I would encourage you to come to the hearing. It will be for this, it will be in November. And we can get back to you, but it would. If you understand the principles and you think that they're good, well, either way. I would encourage you to come to me, but if you.
Hold with us.
I should be clear. Either way, you are more than welcome to come, and I do truly mean that. But it would be really great if we had some input from people who are in favor of developers and who understand some of the needs for that and why it should be my way. So please don't hesitate to go.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next up is new business. We have two revisions that was worked on in a ad hoc committee of sorts, which was essentially Jason, myself, and Sierra in a meeting last week, 2 weeks ago? Couple weeks ago. And so that was included in your packets in a track changes format. We spent a good amount of time prior to the meeting, during the meeting, going through it. You know, I think most of it is updating, number one, to make sure that we're in accordance with the statute. So if we started with the ordinance, which is what allows us to exist and operate, we are allowed, the city of Groton is allowed to establish such a commission based on two statutes. So we made sure both were referenced in the ordinance. and then include, just sort of edited some of the text specifically in the powers and duties to basically reflect what the ordinance says, and then just make some, tweaks to exactly what we're aiming to do, and allow us to, for example, operate a grant program, but also be able to talk about things like pedestrian and bike networks, things like that. So making sure that that's included in powers. In membership, that was one of the biggest reasons we had to change this. We had some, especially in the bylaws, some issues on what the membership should consist of, but most importantly, our membership requirements were more, enhanced compared to the ordinance or compared to the statute. And we certainly don't need that. We just need to have the minimums that are in the ordinance. So that's what statute, I keep these legal terms.
Well, the statute begets the ordinance, so
Yeah,
we cleaned up the ordinance to reflect.
the statute.
Now the bylaws reflect the ordinance.
Right, it's all very easy to understand. But basically just cleaned up that language, made sure that everything's in line, we're starting with the statute, going down to the ordinance, and then you'll see in the bylaws that we're then copying a lot of the same language. So the ordinance, you take a look at it, again, this is technically not for us to approve, this goes to council and the mayor. But this is the edits that we would suggest to them essentially, and then, there's some highlighted dates, which just obviously need to be updated. So in that, on that subject, any questions, comments on any of the suggested changes there? Jason?
I did notice when I opened both of I want to say they were the DocX versions of the ordinance and the bylaws, that in addition to the edits that we had made, there were a couple of lingering format type errors that Word presents with a wavy line underneath, that sitting here right now, I don't remember which ones they were, I didn't mark them. So I would just say that it's worth taking a strain, straining it through that before we consider it final. Just because just a space here or a whatever, couple little odds and ends that I didn't see anything that was substantive, but in terms of
Double check the format.
Barring any minor formatting issues, any other issues or anything to discuss, edits?
we left it with a couple of sections that we had
That was the
That
bylaws.
bylaws, right? Yeah,
in the bylaws.
yeah, okay, so first, before we go there,
Okay.
anything else on the ordinance? I assume the next step would be us voting to remove this to the mayor, right? Okay, so I'll make a motion that these edits, pending formatting changes, be forwarded onto the mayor's office, for their, with our recommendation, for a edited ordinance we put into effect. A second on that. Second of that, okay, any more discussion?
Only that I would recommend that we pass this motion with the understanding that any further edits would be strictly formatted, space before, after a comma kind of thing. Just to allow it to go as is with those potential, minor Microsoft Word companies.
Exactly, okay, perfect, yes, formatting edits only, nothing substantive. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, so moved, okay, great. So that is the ordinance. So bylaws, similar changes, you'll notice in, purpose and a lot of the language will essentially be copied from the edited ordinance into the bylaws. Small changes like the office of the commission is planning and economic development instead of the office of the mayor. Most importantly, the number spelled out and the number of parentheses are the same, which was not the case in the previous bylaws. So took out unnecessary wording in some cases. And in our little subcommittee, we made it through, I think, to meetings, but section 5, yeah, before we had to end our meeting there, so. Just looking again, section 4, commissions and officers, we included, the mandatory position of secretary, which was not there before. It used to just be chairman and one or more vice chairman. It said that a secretary as it may determine, but we made it so that a secretary is a mandatory position, so that there is always a person keeping the records of the commission. And then we removed the appointed language because it is by vote in the commission. And then made vice chairman sort of an optional but recommended position in the commission there. And then we just completely got rid of one of these items because it didn't seem like it was necessary, which was number 6 in section 4. You can see there. So that leaves us with section 5. So before we made, it looks like some small changes, but before we jump into that, any questions on the other changes? There are also some in section 6. Again, all minor, but any comments on this changes already suggested?
Is there any chance you can go a little bit more in depth about the reason you decided to cut section 6 there?
Yeah, let's see, in addition to that. Because it was already said in the previous section, in section 4, in the various other numbers, everything that was stated in 6 was already stated.
Right.
That was the idea.
Yeah, it was basically.
Okay, so not hearing
Good
any
question.
there. In the rest of, section 5, and then section 6 and section 7, any potential change that, Jason, if you had a chance to go.
They're really small.
Oh, 8 and 9, yes.
We also had a misnumbering in the sections of the bylaw, so that's how it actually now breaks out into 9 instead of just the 8. There were 2 7s, I think. Yeah.
One of the things that when I was going through this, the first pass I got rid of was the by mail for commission meetings notification, just because in today's day and age, I feel like it's unfair to notify people by mail. Because most people, we live in an electronic world, so either personally or electronically, I think is enough. But that was just a small piece there, and then the quorum moving.
Save the trees that way, I think.
Right. The quorum shall not consist of less than 3 members, understanding that now our minimum membership on the commission will be 5, so 3 is still a majority if we are just a 5-member club. Any other edits, comments, bylaw revision? My only question is if we need to wait to approve this until the ordinance is in effect, because some of this would be in violation of the ordinance if we were to approve it now.
Do it contingent on the approval of the ordinance? Or
I
we
think
can
you set
separate
a
them.
goal to have these in place at the December meeting. To ratify them at the December meeting, which would be after approval of the ordinance.
Would it be, I don't know.
I can bring this, I can move these forward, so like the ordinance, since we voted on that, that can go before the council at this October's committee of the whole. And then they can make whatever decision and kind of get back to us on whether or not we need to do more or changes or whatever.
Since the ordinance is so simple. And we just approved it. My recommendation would be that we allow the mayor and council to approve the ordinance.
Okay.
And then that gives us a cycle to take and digest the bylaws. I mean, no disrespect to the ad hoc committee.
Yeah.
They did really good work. But, you know, give you a chance to, you know, see if we missed something, or if we, you know, went awry somewhere, or just things we looked at 10 times and we don't see the errors anymore. And then now, like you said, now it'll be a legal territory to put things in place that reflect the ordinance. We can, you know, approve it at the beginning of the month following.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's better to have the ordinance in place first. Great,
So
all
I'll
right,
put the bylaws back on for our next meeting agenda.
sure, yeah, I think just to see if there's any changes, and hopefully by then the ordinance is in good shape. So, we'll be good there.
When is the committee of the whole meeting?
October 23rd.
Don't they have to post it somewhere, like they have to?
Meeting?
Necessarily be approved by November.
I'm just presenting our recommendations, and whatever the process is after that, I will get a full.
Okay,
I think I'll get a full understanding of that process once I bring this to the city clerk and the mayor tomorrow. But I know I at least have to present it to them, and the
Okay.
earliest I can do that is,
yeah.
I believe, the committee of the whole, the 23rd, sorry.
They should be able to, if I remember the process correctly, agree to move it to their next meeting agenda or vote as a resolution. So if you present it at committee of the whole, they will vote then to move it to their next agenda. And in the meantime, it'll be drafted as a resolution to accept the ordinance. And then their next meeting, it'll be on the agenda, public meeting, actions taken, because committee of the whole, they don't vote on it.
Correct.
Except for moving things to the
Mayor and council.
mayor council.
But if there are additional steps or anything between then, the city clerk will let me know.
All right, so that's that. Then we're moving on to old business, business outreach update from the commissioners. I know that I have not done anything more from the last meeting. I don't know if anyone else has done any sort of outreach, business owners. Sarah, I think it would be worthwhile to take the original list and maybe edit it and remove some of the people that have been contacted, you know, look at Blue Dot and see if there hasn't been contact, maybe just refresh it. Because again, I think it's been a couple months before we've done some of that, so we'll do I think we should do a refresh there. But, economic development grant program, I believe.
Sorry.
Sure, oh,
Sorry, some businesses.
I talked to, I talked to, the owner of Avery Market. He wanted to thank us. He did very well the day of the brew run.
oh,
He did,
okay.
very well. He didn't even really know about it. I live across the street, so I walked over and he said, "What are you getting ready for?" And I told him about it, so. And when people were leaving, they did need gas, so I did point him down to that area, but he did say thank you. I've been developing a relationship with him. I have a young lady that I'm working with right now. She would like to open a non-dairy coffee shop.
Okay.
She wants to keep it, yes. She wants to keep it here in Groton. She wants to be in Groton. I did look over at Pizza Today for her, but as you see, what's her name? Twisted Misty is there. She did say it doesn't matter because we're not selling the same thing. Plus, I did get her permission to speak to you guys too, just to let you know. She said it was okay. But I have a investor or a landlord who's not on the market. I'm gonna take her to look at that next week. It is in the city, it's in Groton City. So if she does like that, we'll go from there. She does want to provide outdoor seating. She wants to make it, you know, hangout spot. She wants
Sure.
the area to be able to come there. She wants to be able to hold events. She already has vendors. She's working with the small business administrator. She's in the middle, close on her funding. We do just have to look at a building so we can add that in and see where, you know, where she needs to be at for that. So I'll keep you updated on that as well, but she does want to stay in Groton.
That's
So
great.
that's her goal, to stay over on this side in this area.
We wanted to stay in Groton.
Yes, I am trying. I'm not like, oh, been trying, I was like, oh, you say, you know, so, but she does, she wants the feel of people to be able to walk in, be able to engage with other people, she's open mic nights, poetry, things like that, and like I said, she has her vendors, it's going to be her and her husband for now, until they can work. She's run 3 different coffee shops, previously, this is going to be her first time owning one on her own, so. She's working with the small business to finish up her business, planning, and her funding is almost done, as I said, so,
She went with the council.
yes. And I also told her to go to the Women's Development Council too, just to see if they might be able to help her with anything, so, yeah. So those are good too.
And if she does find, location in the city, make sure to connect her with Leslie to talk about the outdoor seating and how that whole thing works.
Okay. She said she didn't want it too big, just the seat or two,
Yeah.
but she rolled around and said that is the #1 thing that she wants to have in the area. She likes to sit outside, and a lot of her friends, they already said, you know, they want to sit outside in the sections, so hopefully. I have 2 locations in the city, Groton City, that we're gonna look at Monday or Tuesday, so I'll keep you updated. Hopefully keep her in this area.
Yeah, that's great, that's great, that's what we want.
So quick updates, still in the process of talking with Bark and Pumpkins about their minor facade improvement, application. They have not, the work has not been completed for the electrical side of it. And they are just getting in touch with the contractors to get us the proof of payment, so that is still pending. Ricconi's is interested in doing a lot of improvements. I guess it was recently sold, or within the past couple of years, it was sold, so it's under new management, but it was the same. She was a bartender that was there and got the opportunity, so now she runs it. So she is looking to do more with the space, create more of a venue space, be able to have programming and events there. So that is a long-term goal. In the short term, she is looking to replace the facade window of her business. So she will be potentially getting in touch with us in regards to that. There is a new therapy practice that is looking to move into 404 Thames Street. That's gonna be where, on the corner of Thames and Banker, or kind of close to that corner. I also was able to talk with the management of 40 Thieves, talking about outdoor gathering space. They're interested in our minor facade improvement program to kind of redo a few items in that space. Since it is under new management, but it's just a refresh of the rebranding effort that they're trying to do. They also have a Oktoberfest that they will be hosting on 14th. They're gonna be having food trucks and different things out there, all this programming. I think it's gonna be interesting to see, because that is a similar space that we're looking to do something for the programming of pedestrian and cyclists, so that's happening, and they're actually one of the business that sees a need of a program to be in the city, and is trying to figure out more ways to do that at the same time that they're trying to rebrand their image.
40s under
This is 40s things.
Yeah, something like that. I think they're still all involved, but I think there's like a transition of who's doing what.
So I had talked to Darren probably a year ago about, he had talked about doing changing the outdoor stuff, because that was added during COVID. Right? And just talking about the grant program, and I think lighting maybe.
Yeah. Lighting, heaters, maybe a new business sign. Something with landscaping, but I didn't mention about it being the animals. Yeah, animals. And and I also did talk to all the businesses along Thames Street, or at least reached out to them in regards to the Bridge Street Gateway demonstration. you'll start to see like the commission is talking about the GC zone. Our project is also in the GC, so we'll be looking at that neighborhood from multiple different perspectives and really want to work with the businesses in that area to make sure they're aware of everything that's going on, but also to see what we can do to help them with any type of programming that they want to do, especially during the demonstration, like after the demonstration is done. I mean, that is a new community space that we want people to utilize, so to work with the businesses and do some. I don't know if we have the funding to do very much programming for them, but to at least encourage them or work with them to do something.
When is that demonstration? I thought it was happening right now.
So it was supposed to happen in September. We did not receive our state approval, so it is getting pushed back until May.
Oh.
So we'll do it in, over the winter time. It's
That's fine.
between the wind, between the snow and the weather and everything, all the material is not going to stay. So we're pushing it back to May. And then that also now gives us more time to work with, make sure everything with the state is, they have everything they want, since the nature of the intersection itself just takes a couple extra sets of eyes, but we're getting through that process. And even the consultants that we've been working with on this street plans, from other projects that they're doing throughout the state, they started to add in a programming component to it, trying to work with the local businesses while they're doing it, setting up the demonstration so that they have that programming piece, can use that demonstration as something that helps drive the traffic. Hey, Margaret.
Hey guys, sorry for being late.
Right, all right. You want to talk about the grant program updates?
Or
Well, we
sorry, Margaret, to put you on the spot, but we were just finishing up business outreach updates. Did you have anything that you want to share? All right.
I'm sorry, I do not, I am double muted, sorry.
Okay, you're good. All right, so as far, then moving on to grant program. So CJ Laundromat was approved by the council this Monday. And so now I'm in the process of processing all the financial stuff so that he can receive his check. And I will be coordinating the photo op. If not next week, then the following week, but within the next couple of weeks, we can get that out to him. ASAP.
Yeah, policy and procedure revision, for those who weren't at the meeting last time, it's in the minutes, all the edits that we discussed. It's something that, I don't know if I have the Word document, the original one, to actually make the edits in it. Did you make the edits?
Yeah.
Was that, I don't know.
Yeah, actually,
Was
I
that-
don't know, did that?
I don't know if you sent that document out.
The minutes were in
The minutes, but the actual edited,
Brent Stone's number?
yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I have it here.
It's at the very end.
the grant. I just printed all of this today. I didn't see it in there.
Nine pages.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, so as you can see, there's plenty of edits and you know, it's listed in the minutes as well. So we talked about quite a bit. I think the one piece of this that I certainly wanted to come back to was the matching program. So we talked last time about speaking with some of the award recipients or people who've applied. And I did have a chance to talk to one of the people who was handling the application or helping with the application for Parking Pumpkins and also with Buford's, and she basically reinforced what Margaret told us about Margaret at Buford's, which was that project would not have happened without a 100% reimbursement of the funds that were spent. And then in addition, looking back at the other projects, there's essentially four that we really talked about. The first one did not know that program existed when the project was done. That's the one that happened to be $2,500, which, you know, seemed convenient, but again, they did not know about the program when they did the project. Number two is Buford's, which we know that. Number three is CJ's Laundromat, which would have met a matching requirement that we were discussing, like a 25%. So again, not a concern there. And then finally, the Barking Pumpkins project, again, that was a project that they were going to do regardless. We are just able to help them with the costs associated with it. So with those four in mind, it still, you know, doesn't necessarily completely solve the question of whether, you know, we're going to see some very convenient numbers in this program. What we had potentially talked about previously was getting some sort of meeting potentially with Sierra before someone starts the project and trying to include that language. And of course, I have not seen this piece here. Did that end up getting incorporated here?
I do. I believe so. But I'll double check.
Yeah, I think we.
I want to go back and make sure I double check our meeting minutes that I got everything.
Okay, yeah, it's in the bold at the end. Any property or business owner operator thinking about a project that will be submitted should contact you. The only thing that I would suggest there is that we suggest that they contact you prior to starting the project if possible. That would be my only suggestion there. And that way, at least, you know, you could bring it to us and we can have an idea, because at that point, it at least gives us a sense of, you know, of being able to communicate with that business owner ahead of time if we're seeing any potential issues with it. We just don't want someone to do a project thinking that it's going to be fully reimbursed and we have potentially an issue that we could have addressed at the start. So I think that would be the only additional edit after the last, but is anyone else notice any other?
Did we agree on the 25% match for the total project cost? Then there's that.
There wasn't
any changes.
It wasn't agreed on, but I just included it, figuring that we'll talk about it
We'll talk
later.
about it, which we have. So that's a decision that we should make with these edits as well. Again, we don't have to finalize this today. You know, we can come back to it. I think this is something that we should try to implement for the first of the year 24. I think, you know, Barking Pumpkins is the only current really active application. I know there's Angelique that's talked about it, but I don't know if she's made any real progress. And it also sounded like her potential project was bigger if she was getting that place open anyway. So I think to implement this before we get too much extra interest, you know, I think a big window for Chonies is going to be probably more than 2,500, things like that. You know, it's potentially, I don't know what. Oh, it's
But,
not. Okay,
yeah, no,
I can't picture it. But,
But like I said, it's like a small one, but it's just the facade
okay.
of it.
So that might be the only one that if you talk to them again, just give them a heads up, you know, but
Okay.
again, none of these, I don't think any of our changes would necessarily really negatively impact them as if we're not going to include the match, but it's a conversation to have, whether we're going to do the match or not.
And Barking Pumpkin is a new business, they're investing a lot more than that amount probably. Right?
Oh, yeah, this is like a $25,000
Yeah.
project.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like what we're contributing to, if the sign is 2,500 and we're paying 2,500, but it's overall, it's only 10% of their total investment in the city. I think that maybe it's kind of part of it as well, right?
Exactly, yeah, and that's what, you know, again, if we use our history so far as a guide, there isn't necessarily a reason why we should put in a match. I think we're thinking about the hypotheticals of, you know, hey, this is $2,500. Let me figure out what my buddy who can, you know, has a small construction business can do for $2,500. It's trying to avoid that sort of thing, but I don't know how we get around that, understanding that we also have business owners that need this money the most that would not do a project if they needed to. Put up any of the funds themselves.
So had you decided that you want to keep a skin in the game element, 25%?
We had not decided, I think Sierra just put it in as a discussion point, but we did not decide one way or the other. We left it as we were going to talk to the people who have applied and that's this is the feedback. So now it's us as a commission to decide what we want to do.
I think that, you know, I mean, I understand the idea that the whole purpose of this is to stimulate improvement to the facades of buildings, which, you know, is an improvement for the city. It's a win for everybody. We also have to look at it from the perspective of we're being stewards of public funding. And so I guess, you know, taking it all that into consideration, I think that the best stewardship would be to include some amount of skin in the game element. I don't know if that's 25% or a minimum, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Some sort of minimum contribution. I recognize that even if they came to $2,500.0, they would have to put it up initially to be reimbursed that amount. But whatever that looks like, I think that the best fallback or the best explanation for us, you know, in terms of explaining it to council, explaining it to the taxpayers would be that even if it's dramatic, even if it's minimum 10% or something, you know, that there's some element of, you know, their contribution to the end game that it's not just full reimbursement. You know, it's just that's not a hill to die on, but I just think that in terms of our stewardship of public money, I think that's the perspective I have on that.
I think I 100% said that in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I agree with it. However, like we haven't run out of money, right? We've always given out less than we're issued.
Right.
So far. And take the case of Bufors, she just wouldn't have done it. Right? I mean, that business has been there for, at least 20 years, I don't know, right? I mean,
Right.
Karen before her and someone before Karen. So I think it's good for the city, the business stays there, and I think if she just wouldn't have done it if she had to pay 10% or 5%.
Yeah,
Like-
and I'm feeling deja vu because I think we've kind of come to the same point in the
Yeah.
discussion a couple of meetings ago. And I think what we rationalized was this is a living document. We could go 100%, you know, reimbursement, no skin in the game at this point until we start getting to the point where we're giving it all away by 2 months into the calendar year. And then we can come back to this and go, you know what, we got up the stakes a little bit. There's so much demand that we're gonna have to, you know.
And at that point, even it's not like the council has said you only get 10 grand. You know, could we go, is there more money available? Would we rather see it invested in the city properties? And those businesses versus some other government function?
Sure.
So I mean, I like the idea of having it kind of open-ended and leaving it up to our decision-making process.
And the council approved this, right, the program in the first place, so at the end of the day, the council, who's actually
Yeah.
the steward of the funds, you know, they did, they may not have noticed that piece, but, you know, nevertheless, I think that's.
We are economic development, so we want the funds into the businesses in the city.
Right.
And, you know, I think I'm the one that brought up the first time and said, I think, and I just, I don't wanna be in a position where everyone knows it's 2,500, so the sign companies know it's 2,500, so the sign that could be 1,500 is now $2,500.
Right.
I don't wanna be in that position.
Right. Which I think, you know, I feel like the people who are talking about this program the most is us, so it's not like, you know, there's that going on right now.
Yeah.
You know, could there be? Yes, I think, and that's where this whole thing is coming from, is we're thinking about the hypotheticals. Because it seems like it could be a pretty easy reality, but.
Correct me, 2,500, we don't have a cap, I mean, we've kind of done it internally, right? Or do we have, is it a cap of 25?
Well, I think the cap comes from the program,
Okay.
which has been approved by council, yeah.
Yeah, again, you know, if we keep it 100% reimbursement up to that cap amount. And we find it's either getting abused or there's just so much demand. And maybe we have to have a contribution or ask council for more to distribute,
Yeah, ask for more and
you know?
they give it to us and we continue business as usual.
Sure.
Or they might advise us, hey, maybe you should call the cap, I don't know, they're the stewards of funds, right?
Well, I mean, that's why we exist though, you know, to advise them
Yeah.
on how best to filter that, but, you know, I think like we've said, it's not getting abused yet, it's not
Yeah.
getting running out of money yet, so we're trying to give it away.
I mean, I was reading an article today, I was in an argument about residential property values with someone today, and they're like, oh, it's gonna crash, it's gonna crash. Like, I don't care what it does anywhere else in the country. With our largest employer, what they're doing over the next 10 years and their peak of employment isn't for till 2033. We're an isolated bubble.
Right.
So anything we can do to keep those people here and businesses and spending their money here, whether they're leaving or living here, is gonna be good for our community that we live in.
I agree.
So,
Well,
so we didn't answer our question.
let's take a quick poll. Who's in favor of having a matching element in this document?
You mean having the applicant
Have
eventually own some portion of the not full reimbursement?
Exactly, not full reimbursement, having some. Is there anyone who's in favor of making that a requirement in these grant edits then?
I think for the 2024 edition of this.
No.
I'm not concerned that's in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say no,
No, for,
we just
okay,
need to have that in our back of our heads. We're
And
stuff
so-
the next potentially running out of money.
Sure.
And I'd agree.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
okay, all right, great.
Thanks, Margaret.
So that being said, even though I didn't see the full edits, is there any other notes on the edits? Is that something that we want to move forward as well with the ordinance to council for their review at committee of the whole, and then, you know, we can put it in effective January 1st, do you have something to say?
I was, as a potential edit, I think adding the check, I wanna go back and read this, but I think adding a clear checklist of what is required in the submissions would be good. The experience I'm having with the proof of payment, with Barkin Pumpkins, it seems to be a lack of clarity, but from our finance perspective and even
Yeah.
Leslie and the mayor, we need to have some type of receipt of payment from the contractor or a billing invoice that actually shows the work that is done, like a canceled check. That just shows the front end of the check and the numbers printed on the back does not give us any information to kind of go back on, so that is not an approved submittal, for proof of payment, so.
So it sounds like we need to push this off at least a meeting so that you can take a look.
Like a
Yeah.
paid invoice, is that,
Or something,
I mean, any business should be able to provide that.
true, but they wanted to submit a canceled check as proof of payment, and there was a whole back and forth of why that couldn't be accepted, but I was thinking for us on the back end, and I know we even had the discussion about insurance and really what was required for that, of kind of clearly identifying what those documents are, what's acceptable, what's not.
Yeah, I think
so,
that, I think that makes sense. I mean, I looked at some other, like other places that you require reimbursement, you have to show what that paid for, because in especially in the Barkin Pumpkins, we don't know whether that proof of payment was for everything but the facade, right? We're approving reimbursement for the facade. We don't know if they actually paid for that piece, you know, if that was the right contractor. So I think an invoice that is showing that work needs to be required. So, yeah, I think we have
Just
to,
maybe just add.
yeah, so we have a few edits. So we have that edit that you just mentioned. We have the edit of removing the matching piece, which we have put in temporarily, and then adding that language at the back that just says that they should contact you before starting the project.
Okay.
My suggestion would be that you, I mean, as far as the program language, you know, it's laid out pretty well. But we might add like a attachment 1 or something, and then have that be
The checklist.
a timeline and checklist of, step 1, see.
That form you use, basically.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
the one
The
that you-
other one that I shared. with
Yeah,
you
the one
guys?
that you share
Okay.
with us, maybe include that as an appendix or,
Yep.
you know, an attachment, you know. And
And
then
then-
lay it out well there.
Right, and then our overview of that, it would be just to make sure that all the elements in the appendix. You know, conform to the language and, cause I agree, I mean, you're not gonna hand them this and expect them to glean. All the subtleties of what comes first and who to notify and all that stuff, I think it'd be. The distilled version that you would use as a checklist, here's the original document, or you know, the source document. And here's the, you know, where the rubber meets the road, how do you execute it? I think it'd be good to have it all part of the same.
Yeah, it's great.
document.
Let's do that.
And that will say like, hey, EDC meets on the first Wednesday of the month, so if they're submitting it on the first Thursday of the month. We don't even move it along for a month.
Yeah.
And if that's kind of spelled out, maybe, I don't know.
That's not spelled out anywhere. I have just been doing it where if I can get it, like we have 24 hours to post our agendas. So if they give it to me on like Monday, and I can have all the submission and documents ready for Tuesday for it to be put in the agenda, then include it. But that isn't for discussion. It's not clearly.
If they care that much,
Said
they should.
where?
I think, is it included that it needs to come to this commission's meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if they care that much, they should look.
It's a timeline, it's in the office. And
Yeah.
then the next timeline is, you know, it gets reviewed at the next meeting of the EDC. By the way, that's the first one. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna do this step.
Yeah.
Tuesday of the month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know the submitting things, if I know that it's gotta be by this date, I'm gonna make sure I get it by that date. You know?
No, that's fair. Yeah.
And then, you know, we gotta pass it to council, and they've gotta approve it, and all these other, you know, did you do a building permit, did you do all these other things, all that, I'm assuming will be in there.
Yeah.
You could include, you know, like, for example, you know, under the submission, you know, if you want to include it in this month's, you know, it has to be submitted by the notice date for the agenda. You know, so the submission date would be the, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, for it to be included, like for the November council meeting to approve it, wouldn't it need to have been submitted like Monday of this week for
For
November's
us,
meeting?
for us to talk about it today,
It would need to be Monday, and then that goes to the committee of the whole at the end of this month, which then gets voted on at the mayor and council in November, right? Yeah, so for a November approval, you need to have it in by the first Monday of the month. Well,
And that gives you
technically, the
zero.
first Monday could not be,
Right,
and that
and
gives
that
her.
gives zero time, that's immediate hot potato right to the
and
agenda.
then, so.
By the last Wednesday of the
I'm
month.
gonna say,
Yeah, maybe by
in
the
essence, I guess, if you submit the application with the whole review process. It wouldn't be wise for them to submit it that
Oh,
Monday
sure.
and think that the entire review process would be done in like 2 days.
Right.
But if they're working with me already, it's kind of like, well, whatever if we already know what you need to have submitted, the last day you can possibly have your submissions in to me are
Yeah, I think we
this
get.
time.
into
And I may
that
bring it up to you guys,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like, but if it stays here as a discussion piece, and like Barking Pumpkins.
Yeah, I did.
They didn't have all their stuff. You guys are well aware what that project is and what they're doing, and we're just waiting for that to final up, and then they'll have it. But if they have it to me on Monday, then I can include it.
Well, but you have all those checks to make, which I forgot about. I mean, you have to check with Groton Utilities, you have to check with the tax, I mean, so that, we don't, you know. We don't wanna necessarily bind you by saying, oh, if you have it in by the last Wednesday of the month, we will have all those checks done by the next Wednesday.
Yeah, and if we're that worried about the timeline down to the day, well, if I submit it on, you know, Thursday, the 4th, I'll get my check by 6 weeks, but that's cutting it a little close. And if it's that desperate to make sure that they get the reimbursement check on time, probably shouldn't be undertaking the project in the first place.
But
Well,
yeah, I'm gonna.
I mean, yeah, case in point, I mean, yeah, some businesses just wouldn't have done it, so they, you know, they would like to know, all right, I'm gonna write the check on X, it's gonna be a 60-day process.
Sure.
I get it back,
Yeah.
it's, you know,
I think for like actually writing like the checklist, we should keep it as simple as possible, because if that is a genuine concern that they have, that they're like, this timeline needs to be airtight for me. They'll talk to Sierra about it, they'd be like, this is my concern timeline wise, like, how close do I need to do it? But I think like simplicity wise, we should keep the checklist with the bare essentials of what they need. And then like you said, like the day that we need. so that they know, okay, I need it for this date to me to start that process.
Sure, you could say something general like reimbursement checks are typically issued within 60 days of submission. Or something like that, see an economic development manager for more details.
Yeah.
And then you could say, well, where are we in the month? What does that look like for your actual timeline?
Yeah, you would, I mean, like you say, like worst case scenario, they submitted it to you tomorrow. Right, then that, I mean, that gives you almost a month to do all the checks, then that comes to us in November, that goes to committee of the whole end of November, and then it's December where they potentially are approved, and then it's a check issuance, so. I mean, in that case, you may wanna say 75 days, if that's.
Whatever that is, rounding up.
And you have
So you wanna just give a
building
timeline,
permits with
like the quickest,
building and zoning, and if there's any issues there with size, and they may need to develop a plan for that.
if you have everything done and everything is checked and. you
Right,
know
well, I
it's
think that's what you
the
said.
quickest way that the quickest time frame you can get through this is maybe, wow, yeah, 60, when you said 75, I was like, okay, dependent, maybe 60.
I think
I think
as generous
60
as possible,
I was
I think
gonna
as
say-
generous as possible, because you don't
Because the other tie-up thing is too, is when it comes to the checks, I have to wait for the minutes and everything to be completed and whatever that process is to send everything or finance when I issue the check.
Sure.
So
90.
Sometimes-
Sounds like 90 days.
sometimes there'll be something
Sounds like
like that.
typically 90.
It's better to under promise. and over
Yeah, that's right. Typically 90 days.
Approximately.
Sorry, and we're running out of time here, so any other notes here, and then we'll pick this up at the next meeting. No, okay, all right, so much for a quick meeting. We were planning on having today. Yeah, just real quick here. Yeah.
So
I'm just-
I gotta get the Southern High School at 7:00.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I will point out though, that public comment, that was Leslie, right?
Well, I guess she,
3 minutes.
no,
before-
she was on the back. She was
Oh,
on the back,
okay.
report from the. Should have turned her off. But yeah, just real quick programming, ribbon cutting, yeah, if you have any.
Okay, so more businesses are coming in, more ribbon cuttings are wanting to, or is the general interest for having more ribbon cuttings. So trying to coordinate this in a way where we weren't running around as a commission crazy and doing multiple ones. So I was thinking of doing maybe a stroll one day and we can just hit multiple of them. The other thing that has been a little bit of a challenge has been the mayor's available kind of whenever we really need him, but we were gonna have the state reps come too. And right now, the scheduling is a little bit crazy, so I don't know if we're gonna I'm trying to get us in as much of the warm weather as possible. But so I'm trying to shoot for either sometime in late October or I actually have to go, I'll be out of the office for a little bit in early November, and then I can maybe do something in like mid-November. So I would personally reach out to Ally on the things to make sure that that is coordinated in the best, but Ally on the things, Paul Costa has new management, so that would be a
Did
good
they
one.
agree?
Twisted. Some of these are still like
Like
an interest, but
yeah, like I call.
circle back and
Yeah,
and double check.
okay,
Twisted Misty, they did just do their grand opening on Saturday, but I think the more recognition we can get for them would be great. Two Sisters Shipping and Alpha Auto, they have been here for a while, but this is just a kind of following back up.
yeah, I think it'd be fun, Paul, they have
of
to return
them.
my first one. Okay.
And then I think 40 Thieves may be another good group to add to this, since they are also under new management and are doing a whole new rebranding.
I think, yeah, these other people, let's get some dates so that when we call, we can actually,
Okay.
because like Ally on Thames is a good one because she's very flexible, but I feel like these other people, we may just need to give them like, hey,
this
either
is the
2
date.
dates or 3 dates, which one works best for you,
Okay.
and then go.
The other thing is, if we were to do a stroll, do we just wanna, I know we were talking about getting like light refreshments, maybe for alleys, but if we try to do multiple of them in a day, do we wanna end somewhere and then have refreshments,
think it
or
could
do
be
you
end.
just wanna do something at that business at that moment and kind of keep the,
I would just feel like
Bus
we'd have to rush it so much if we did it at each location, if we're trying to do all these. I would say let's, we schedule them sort of how quick they were at those other places, like 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and then we try to have a better reception here. Like maybe in the foyer out front or something like that.
40 feet should be enough, bad place.
Oh, there you go.
You have better beverages there than.
Yeah, then we can.
Well,
Okay.
get your coffee shop going.
Yeah.
Coffee shop. We'll start off with a non-dairy black coffee at the beginning. And if it's a long stroll, we gotta think about like Gatorade stations.
Yeah.
miss these first and then end up.
There you go, there you go.
Okay, alright, so I'll pick out some
Yeah.
dates and I'll email you. And
Yeah,
we'll,
we'll work on
alright, thank you, appreciate that. Community engagement on November 15th, Leslie and I are going to do a Zoom, kind of just open house forum where people can come and talk to us about some of the projects we're working on. Obviously, Bridge Street Gateway, we are making headway in our resiliency work. The zoning updates, general things, we'll send out more information, but convenience of everybody being able to be at home and just join us via Zoom may help us get more participation. We are looking for more community participation in things in our decision making. So definitely as we end this year and get into 2024, I'll be pulling on this commission more for more assistance with those connections. And Leslie already did her things, as far as communications, so, I applied on behalf of the city. On behalf of the city, I applied to Connecticut's, Economic Development Association's best practice in economic development and land use planning. The application basically looks at planning, economic development, building and zoning, and even our utilities, the entire process that a developer needs to go through, when they are interested in doing a process. So we kind of break down our meeting structures, our resources, who we're connected with, et cetera, and the city was awarded a gold certification based off of that.
Great.
This is the second time we won the award. We won it 3 years ago, and it's a 3-year program, and I believe we were bronze when we first did it. So it speaks to the level of improvements that all of the city of Groton departments have made, because I think, if you guys aren't aware, building and zoning did a big overhaul of all of their, they have some new system, new filing stuff, and that has made the process a lot easier and smoother for a lot of people, even residential, just that whole permitting system. So this is just kudos to everybody, but we won the award and we'll get it on the 17th.
That's awesome. Now, I feel silly for asking this, but I assume gold is the highest, there's no like platinum above that? Or?
Right, yeah. Well, let me
All
go,
right,
let me double check, let me double check.
It should be
Let-
the highest.
Let me double check.
You never know, they sometimes throw in these other.
Little
breakfast
thing.
medals.
And then the last thing is the business newsletter went out today. It is pretty thick and lengthy, but I would encourage you to look at it. A lot of the organizations are starting up a fresh set of programming. There's minority programming, business development center doing a lot of stuff, and there are still those grant opportunities that are out there. Also, there has been a little bit more momentum, movement forward about the ARPA funding conversation in the city. It looks like there is still interest in the small business grant program portion of it, so you may hear the council speaking on some of those decisions in the near future. So keep your eyes and ears all together. And on that note, I am.
We will adjourn at 6:55. Yeah, it's on the 7th.
We're still tapping in.
Yeah, we get the numbers.
Welcome. That is from
Just say,
all of us.
Okay, thank you.
say, you did it, and I second.
Yeah, there you go.
That's for the baby, not for this meeting, don't expect it every month.
I have to go, we take a picture with a pizza every month, and so
Nice.
pizza's getting cold. Go take a picture with a baby, get a pizza box.
Have a lovely evening, all.